Hello, this is the story of your future and our ancient past. The year is now 2079. It has been 39 years since the fallout. The world has become a much different place than it is now. But even after this catastrophe, the war between nations is still being waged. The people of the land, sea, and space have engaged in a deadly conflict, which will remain in the precarious balance of three warriors. But here's a little history between the fallout of 2040 and the perils of 2079, and how this situation came to be. After the nuclear war, which wiped out billions of lives off the face of the earth, a long, trying struggle proceeded. Powerful countries, including China, Russia, America, the whole of Europe, and all their allies fought for dominance underneath the clouded skies. The war lasted 6 years. There was no official treaty or surrender, and eventually there was no one left to fight. And that's when the war ebbed away to a bloody draw. When it was over, there weren't more than 50,000 people left in the United States. The entirety of Asia, Europe, and Africa had undergone a deadly plague. The disease induced vomiting blood, headaches, hydrophobia, loss of appetite, and strokes. With no cure, the mysterious disease mutated and became so deadly that everyone who became infected was almost guaranteed to die. Though no one really knows, it is estimated that only 10,000 out of the entirety of these three continents survived, rendering the East silent as death. South America became subject to uprisings and civil wars. Gangs and governments waged long revolutions in their struggle to keep themselves in power. In the end, the results were the same as it was anywhere else: annihilation. After World War III, it became four categories of people. Some fled into long underground tunnels, taking refuge in bunkers, waiting years before they would resurface. Before the war, many colonies had been established in the deep sea. Underwater cities flourished, safe from the war on the land, so many sought refuge there. A rather large colony was established beyond our atmosphere, on the moon, and several other alliances on massive rotating space stations. They watched the war from a distance and continued to grow in numbers and power. The people who were still alive on the surface were dubbed the surface dwellers. The surface dwellers were a scattered, warlike people. Civility ripped from their scarred souls like the clothes ripped from their torn bodies. The thousands of gangs, groups, families, tribes, and clans fought and fought for resources. They wandered the ruins of bombed cities and haunted the dark woods of North America. A group of about 100 survivors from Arkansas left their home in search of food and security. As the story goes, they arrived in northern Arkansas by a creek and set up a temporary camp until they could determine whether or not the land there was safe to live on. About some 5 miles from their camp was a downed nuclear reactor that had been destroyed during the war. There was a town nearby with only one resident. The old man who lived there warned the travelers about a large beast that lurked in the woods around those parts. He described it as a bear, but abnormally large and utterly deformed, likely due to radiation poisoning. But with enough food to support the group of travelers, the area was too good to give up on because of some old bear. Despite the old man's warnings, the group decided to hunt it down. Within a few nights, the beast had killed 10 men, women, and children, stalking them in the night. The estimated weight of this terrible creature was 2,500 pounds of solid muscle. Its height on all fours was nearly 7 feet tall. The face of this bear was twisted. One eye was missing, the other was abnormally large. Its nose was deformed, and it crawled weirdly. They named it Knob on account of its appearance. Under the dark post-fallout skies, the survivors searched for the creature. The warriors of the clan geared themselves with whatever weapons they had and went off into the wilderness to kill the creature. After arriving in the abandoned town, it wasn't long before they found the mighty beast. The 8 warriors fired their weapons at Knob, but it ran away across the street and hid for cover behind a house. Still, the warriors fired at the house, eventually stripping it of the walls with their heavy caliber weapons. After realizing Knob was no longer there, they spread about looking for him. Knob ambushed them as they're about ready to give up on the search. He ripped apart two of the fighters, rendering a bloody massacre. Exhausted and low on ammunition, the warriors were able to get a few shots at the beast. It was only a few minutes before Nob had the last three warriors cornered. A warrior by the name of Zeke was the first to be thrown into a corner. The other two warriors were viciously devoured. As retold in the ancient stories, Zeke rose to his feet to face Nob, who was closing in to butcher him too. Zeke maneuvered past the monster and clubbed him in the nose, only distracting him for a second. But during his dash away from the monster, he was able to grab a dagger from one of the bodies of his fallen warriors that lay smeared about him. He ran as fast as he could towards the nearest wall, where Nob chased him again. Zeke was able to jump off that wall and land on the back of the monster, as it smashed into the wall. Zeke wrapped his muscular arms around Nob's neck and held on for dear life. Nob violently tried to shake his attacker off. To this, Zeke responded by sticking the dagger into Nob's neck, pushing his own hand in as deep as possible, following the depth of the wound. Finally, the beast was overcome by blood loss, and Zeke sprinted back home. He was now known as Zeke, the Slayer of Nob. The elders of the clan gave him his new name, Nobasio. He became the leader of the clan and soon made the decision to move his people to Kentucky, where they flourished and began to rebuild society somewhat. Meanwhile, the rest of the world continued to dwindle in strength and population. Asia became completely uninhabited by humans, as so did Africa. Many lives were destroyed in a conflict between the peoples of Mexico and Central America and their adversaries of South America. Another brutal war was fought, which ended up basically wiping out everyone in that area. North America suffered dearly after a series of freezing winters, which killed off most of the survivors. Even Nobasio's clan suffered, but most were able to survive their ordeal. Nobasio's son, Crobanio, succeeded his father after his death in 2071 and was left to care for his people. A few survivors outside the clan rallied together and attacked Crobanio's city. After a bloody conflict, the forces were driven away. All of this was observed by the inhabitants of space and the galactic settlements within, as also the moon colonies and occupants of the enormous space stations. Watching the conflicts and the despair below, they decided to come back down to give Earth a second chance. But before they could do so, every living soul on Earth would need to be destroyed to make way for the new, refined settlement. That's where the war took off. A warrior from the Galactic Society named Julian would unite with Crobanios and seek another alliance with the leader of the Deep Sea Peoples, Geoffrey Eskel III, to defend themselves from the inevitable invasion from space. But that is another story from the ancient past and your future.